Ever think you might want to do a triathlon, but then talk yourself out of it? Imagine having a manual to walk you step by step through the process to train and prepare yourself for your first one. On episode 730 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we welcome back Hilary Topper and discuss her new book, Unlocking the Triathlon, a beginner's guide to competing in a triathlon. Welcome to the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, the largest and longest running health and fitness podcast dedicated to people over 40. Whether you're looking to lose weight, get stronger, or improve your health and age better, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Coach Allan, an online health and fitness coach and author of The Wellness Roadmap. Each week, we dive into practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and fitness. If you're ready to look, feel, and perform your best, no matter your age, this podcast is the perfect place to start. Let's get you on the path to a healthier, fitter, and more energetic version of yourself. I hope you'll join us each week, and together we can unlock your full potential. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast. I'm glad you're here. I'm your host, Coach Allan. Really glad that you are here. Hope you're having a great week and a great day. Today, we get to talk to Hilary again. She started from nowhere and got to running, and now she's doing triathlons and coaching triathlons. So a really big thing for her to go from almost nothing to an endurance athlete to now not only completing and competing in triathlons, but also coaching. So really excited for this conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it too. Once a self-proclaimed non-athlete, our guest today spent years climbing the corporate ladder before taking the leap to start her own business. But as time went on, she found herself at a crossroads, yearning for a change. At the age of 48, she laced up her running shoes for the first time, and her life took a remarkable turn. Today, she is a celebrated author, endurance athlete, and inspiration to countless others. She is a USA Triathlon Level 1 coach, USMS Level 3 swim coach, Wowza Open Water swim coach, ESCI endurance coach, RRCA Level 1 run coach, and an adjunct professor at both Hofstra University and Fairleigh Dickinson University. With no further ado, here's Hilary Topper. Hilary, welcome back to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you so much, Allan, for having me. I appreciate it.
So today we're going to talk about your book called Unlocking the Triathlon, a beginner's guide to competing in a triathlon. Last time we had you on, we were talking about, basically getting couch potatoes in the water, getting them doing some of these things. But this is really a solid from zero to doing it and understanding it and knowing the rules, because when you started talking about the rules, I'm like, what do you mean I can't take my helmet off before I rack my bike? I would not have even thought about that. And here they are like, I'm sorry, you're out of here. I'm like, what? I'm not on the bike. I'm not riding. I don't like this helmet. I'm taking it off. Okay. So I learned a lot going through the book, needless to say.
Good. I'm glad.
So let's just take a step and let's talk about what the triathlon really is. And then, of course, there are different versions, various distances. Can we talk about some of those?
Yeah, of course. So a typical triathlon is a swim, a bike, and a run. Now, sometimes triathlons are done in pools, where it's mostly a beginner, like a super sprint type of triathlon, where maybe it's 400 meters or 400 yards, followed by a, 6-mile bike, followed by like a 2-mile run, right? So it's not overly hard when you think about it like that, especially if you're a runner, right? Like if you're a runner, a 2-mile run is nothing, right? Yeah. And then there's the sprint triathlon, right? And that is a little bit longer. It's still a beginner level triathlon. It's more of a 750 meter swim in the open water. Typically, it's in the open water. Sometimes it's a 400-meter swim. I mean, it depends. You have to look at the races and see, because each race is different. Then it's like a 20K bike, and that's about a 12.4-mile bike. And that's followed by a 5K, which would be a 3.1-mile run. Then there's the Olympic, and the Olympic is a little bit longer. It's more of like a 0.93-mile swim, 25-mile bike, and 10K run. And then there's international, which is really cool, because what they do is they make it so that you don't have to it's a little shorter in certain things. Like maybe the swim is shorter, maybe the bike is shorter, maybe the run is shorter. So for those people who feel like maybe I'm not so strong on the bike, I don't want to do 24, 25 miles, maybe I just want to do 20 miles or 18 miles, an international may be appropriate for you. And then of course there's the half Ironman and the Ironman, but I mean, I do talk about it in the book, but that's more for, once you've done them. There are some people though, Allan, who go from 0 to Ironman, and typically, I don't really recommend it. I think you need to get a taste of what it's about and the lifestyle before you kind of jump into that. I feel like those are challenges that you do after, kind of do it kind of like when you're running, you'd start with a 5K, then you do a 10K, then you do a half marathon, then you do a marathon. You don't just go from 0 to marathon, I mean, that's how I would do it. But some people are different. Some people just want to just go for it.
Yeah. Well, I think one of my core takeaways here is you start thinking about the runs and the swims and the bikes, and each one of these in and of itself would be considered somewhat of an endurance event. I mean, particularly for a beginner, 5K it is what it is. It's 3.1 miles. And not everybody can run that distance, especially after they've done these two other events. So, starting off with something that's a little more bite-sized, getting your feet wet, figuratively and absolutely, and then getting in and say, okay, I want to build from that. I mean, obviously, if they already have a very good athletic base and they know they can swim well and they could handle the bike, they may want to go for a bigger distance to start. But one of the key things I got from it was that you're going to find events near you, but you can also kind of almost make this something that you would travel to as recreation. Like, well, here's my vacation, runcation. I used to have a co-host, and they would do runcations, where they would go find a race that they wanted to do, and that's where they would go spend some time and then do a run. This feels that way too.
Without a doubt. It's so much fun. I did, as just getting back to what you were saying before, when you were first starting out, you may just want to do an aqua run if you feel like you could swim and run, but you're not that strong on the bike, or you want to do, an aqua bike. That's stuff I've been doing lately, because I've been having knee issues. So the run's been difficult for me, but now I'm starting to get back. So thankfully.
Good.
But but then there's also duathlons for those who really don't swim, they're just not comfortable in the water and they want to just do, a run bike run. And, and all of these different things, even just a relay, like doing one piece of it out of the 3 and just having fun with it. I mean, I think the bottom line here is that for me, is fun. It doesn't have to be like this way competitive thing where you got a place on, got a podium. I mean, some people, this is their goal. But for me, it's just getting out there and being healthy and having fun with it.
Now, so for someone wanting to get started, because each one of these modalities, if you will, is a sport in and of itself.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, if you're not a seasoned swimmer, if you're not comfortable getting into open water, it can be, quite intimidating. If you don't know much about riding a bike and being on the bike, then there's a lot to learn there. And there, even with the run, technically doing the run well, so you don't injure yourself with repetitive action movements and things like that. All of these are somewhat specialized. how does someone really like get into it where they feel comfortable and confident with all three?
Yeah, I mean, I think you start really slow, right? For me, I did not know how to swim. I did sign up for a triathlon before I knew how to swim, and which was a little bit crazy,
Yeah,
but
I see myself drowning the first segment of the race. How did you do? It's like, well, they had to pull me out of the water because I can't swim. Uh,
you know but joining a master swim group or getting a coach who can teach you learn to swim, somebody who's certified to teach you how to do that. I mean, that's how I did it. I went to a master swim group. I was so intimidated by all the super athletes, who were in the water just killing it. And there's me in the first lane. I couldn't even get across the pool without throwing up. So, but then the master swim coach, he got in the water with me and he started blowing bubbles and I learned how to do it. And it's just, I started using nose plugs because I realized it was going up my sinuses and it
yeah.
was just a mess. But I was able to do it. And now it's like my favorite thing to do is to swim,
Yeah. Well,
so
kudos
yeah,
for not quitting because a lot of
yeah.
times people will struggle with something. And rather than buckle down and say, I'm going to figure this out, they just say, okay, that's it. I'm done. And they just move on and say, okay, I guess I'm going to be doing these duathlons for, for the duration, which is fine, They're both viable opportunities to do something interesting and fun, but it's cool that you kept going.
Yeah, and I think for anyone who's getting started, just take it slow. If you want to hire a coach, that's really a good thing to do. I mean, I worked with several different coaches. My first coach he thought I was in the Olympics. He really like whipped with the whip with me. But I learned a lot from him. And, as I grew in the sport, I hired different coaches, and some of them were very, very supportive, and I needed that, at that point. Now I self coach. I've been using an app called TriDot, and I love it. And this is something that, you can use as well. I mean, there's so many different apps out there that you can start with. Just make sure that they're beginner, and not too over the top. I mean, sometimes, they say beginner. Like, for example, when I started doing triathlons, my first coach, he says to me, go swim 1,600 meters. And I looked at him like, what are you kidding me? I can't even do
I'll see you in
25.
February.
Yeah, seriously. Seriously, but so just make sure, that it's a real beginner type of app, than something that is going to be too overwhelming and then you stop because it's too overwhelming.
Yeah. You also referenced a number of books at the end of your book that I
I
think
do.
would help someone with each of these modalities so that if they're concerned about it, they can kind of get the basics there. And then, yes, probably will get a lot of value from a coach. So, that they can get their performance improved. And once you're doing something well, it's easier to do.
Absolutely. There's also a ton of content on YouTube, and YouTube is your friend. My daughter always says to me, Google is your friend, YouTube is your friend. And there's a GNC, it's based in the UK, and they've got some amazing videos on swim, bike, run that I have found through the years so useful. So, if reading isn't your thing, you may want to just jump on YouTube and look at those.
Yeah. Now, the next thing I want to get into is one of the reasons that I really picked up with running when I was younger was that it didn't cost much.
Mhm.
I already had shorts, I already had a t-shirt, and then it's just, okay, buy a better pair of shoes and boom, you're running. When you start getting into the swim and particularly when you start getting involved with the bike, now we're going to need to make some investments. Now, I know some of this we could probably buy used.
Mhm.
So when it comes to equipment, what are we going to need, bare essentials, and to get started, and what can someone expect to pay to get something that's what they need to get started?
Oh, sure. So with the swim, if you are swimming in the open water and the water, even if the water is relatively warm, you probably want to pick up a shorty wetsuit or a long sleeve wetsuit. Now, what a wetsuit does for you is it keeps you buoyant, right? So you're not going to drown. So forget that fear because it's not going to happen. You can't drown in a wetsuit. You can't. You can't
Right.
sink. You're just floating. And it takes a little bit to get used to. So if you only have access to a pool, I would suggest jumping in with the wetsuit. I know it might sound weird, but it really makes sense to do that. The other thing is, you may not want to wear a wetsuit. I mean, you don't have to. You can just wear a tri-kit, or, a tri-kit is a one-piece kit that you would use for the swim, bike, and run. You don't have to change. You don't have to take stuff off. I mean, there was one triathlon I did, Allan, in Florida, where the guy went into his wetsuit with his underpants on. And then when he went to change into the bike, he took off literally took off his underpants and put on his bike shorts. I mean, that is just not necessary. It just kills a lot of time and it really spooks the people around you.
Yeah,
Kidding.
yeah, I suppose.
But anyway, so I would definitely suggest either renting a wetsuit, which you probably can rent it for the season for a couple $100, or buying a wetsuit, and they also range from 200 to 1500, depending on the brand, depending on the neoprene. I mean, some of them have like thicker around the core, and that'll keep you more buoyant. So you got to figure that out and work with somebody. I mean, if you go into a store to buy it, or you can talk to somebody online to buy it, and they'll walk you through it. The other thing you'll definitely need for the swim are goggles, which I had no idea about. Like the first day that I went in the swimming pool, I didn't wear goggles, and the lifeguard came up to me and said, "Where's your goggles?" I didn't even know you were supposed to wear goggles. I had no idea. So there are different types of goggles out there. Some of them have prescription lenses, if you wear glasses. Some of them are more comfortable. Like lately, I've been using two different types of goggles. I've been using Snake and Pig because sometimes when I wear goggles, I get this really bad headache. So these kind of like don't press into your head as much. It has a lot more cushion. I also use the Form goggles, which I love as well. Those are really interesting because this is like, you don't need these for a beginner.
Yeah.
But if you are like more into the sport, the Form goggles are really cool because you can actually see your stats in your eye. So you don't have to look at your watch every, 5 minutes to, see where you're at. You know how fast it is to get to the end of the pool. You know what your heart rate is. You know all of these different things. And these stats are really, really helpful. And, depending on, I mean, you may need earplugs. A lot of people get very bad sinus infections from the water. That's why I use earplugs and nose plugs. So I don't want anything getting in. um, you know, a good bathing suit. A lot of people I see wearing these bathing suits that are like 3 times the size. Like, maybe they feel uncomfortable in their body and they buy these bigger bathing suits. I always did that too. I always bought like a size 12 bathing suit or 14 bathing suit. I mean, that was so much bigger than what I needed because I didn't want it so tight on my body. But the tighter on the body, the better it is because it creates less drag. When it's big on you, you're really creating a lot of drag and you can't swim as fast. All right, so that's the swim. Then we get to the bike, right? You could buy a used bike. You could borrow a bike. Gwen Gergensen has a story in my book about her first triathlon, and she borrowed her mother's mountain bike for her first. I mean, so your first, you really could borrow one. My training partner, he borrowed a bike from a colleague of his, and the seat was like bitten off by the dog. I mean, it was, you should have seen this thing. It was like a real clunker. But he kicked my butt in that first triathlon that he did. He sped right past me. I'm on this like fancy triathlon bike, and he just sped right past me. And I'm like, wow, I just spent so much money on a bike, and I really didn't have to. That's when my
Well,
aha moment came up.
I've actually at one point owned a really good bike, and I can tell you that the way they work and the weight and everything else about these higher
It's
quality
true.
bikes will make the ride not just faster but easier.
Easier,
And when you start
absolutely.
talking about trying to complete an endurance event, everything you do that slows you down means you're running or swimming or biking longer and harder than you necessarily need to do. So it's, you know, maybe not straight out of the gate buy the $1,500, $3,000 bike, but at some point, if you get into it and begin to as I call identify as the athlete, you're probably going to start looking at higher end bikes as an investment and not just an expense.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, you could get a decent bike for just under $1,000. I mean, that is expensive for a lot of people. It's really
Yeah.
pricey. But if it's something that you really enjoy and you really want to, get into it, then
Yeah.
do
Or
that
you can find
investment.
someone like me who was moving out of the country and was selling his bike for a really good deal.
True. That too.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get a little bit into training. And I think for folks that haven't done endurance training before, I think it would be valuable for us to talk about the training zones.
Yeah. So what's interesting about the zones, and a lot of people don't understand these zones. I remember reading so many books when I first got started. I was trying to figure out, like, what does this mean? What I don't understand. It really is based on either your heart rate or your power. Right. So most people who are starting out don't have a power meter on their bike. And that actually adds like probably another $1,000 on your bike, and it's not really necessary. So what you do is you take your age. So for example, you would take the formula 211, right? Minus 0.64 times your age. Okay. For me, it's like 170 or something like that is my maximum heart rate. And then each zone is based on that maximum heart rate. So, for example, like zone 1 is your recovery rate. So, so for runners, I'm sure a lot of people out there are runners, that would be a very, very easy run. Maybe it's a run walk, maybe it's a walk for some, it's very easy run. And that would be about a 60% of your maximum heart rate. And then there's zone 2, which is more aerobic. This is an aerobic endurance, and this is between 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. And this is more like, moderate easy. Most of triathlon training is done in zone 2, believe it or not. A lot of people like think you got to, get to zone 6 or whatever. Not necessary. No,
Yeah.
don't do that. It's not going to help you. Then there's zone 3, which they call the sweet spot, right? And that's more of like a tempo, moderate intensity. That's between 70 to 80% of your maximum heart rate. So, it's a lot more challenging, but you still can maintain that. It's not something that's going to be like over the top crazy. Most of your triathlons are going to be in that zone, like between 2 and 3 is where you're probably going to end up. And then zone 4 is the threshold. That's 80 to 90% of your maximum heart rate. And that's, like intervals, right? So that would be like a fast 25 or a fast 50 on the swim, or it's a, 3 to 5 minute interval on the bike, where you're going really fast and your cadence is really fast, or you're doing like hill repeats or something on the run. And then there's zone 5, which would be more anaerobic, or they call that VO2 max, right? So that is pretty much going to be it for you. I mean, it's about 90% of your maximum heart rate, you're not going to be able to sustain it. But these fast intervals are really helpful in building up speed. And then finally, zone 6, which is, it's almost impossible.
Okay.
That's like almost impossible there.
Yeah. One of the ways I like to explain it to folks that I found kind of helps, because not everybody has a heart rate monitor or has really spent much time looking at one, is that it's really kind of about, and you can almost go by perceived effort. You talked about it a little bit in the book, is, well, for zone 1, I mean, you could just talk, like a full speech, like, just you giving a speech, and you wouldn't have any problem at all. Zone 2, you can have a good conversation with somebody. That's no problem. A few sentences, and you're fine. When you get to zone 3, this is where you're going to want to start talking in like 3 to 5 word sentences, and stop and take a breath. And so you're less talk and more movement at this point. And then when you start getting to 4, it starts getting very difficult to have any kind of conversation at all. You can say a word, and that's about all you really want to say, because now you're breathing again. And in zone 5, you're not talking. You're just moving. And you can do zone 5 for maybe 30 seconds. So, at the end of a race, if you're trying to pass a couple more people, you might be sprinting and you might find yourself in zone 5, just trying to get to the water sooner because you're a faster swimmer and you just want to be ahead of people versus behind them. Those types of things. There are going to be times when you're sprinting and you get yourself to that level. And then zone 6, that's kind of a no-go zone, particularly for us over 40. There's not many reasons for you to ever be pushing that hard. No one's paying you to win this race.
No.
So you don't.
Absolutely.
All right. You got into something else that I think is really important, particularly with endurance sports, and that's the mental side and doing mental training. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I think that what happens with most of us, and it's kind of a shame that this happens, is that we compare ourselves to other people. And especially like if you decide to jump on Strava, which is a running, triathlon, swimming app, right? So you'll see what other people are doing, and you start comparing yourself and you start thinking bad about yourself. Oh, I'm not as good as this person or whatever. And the thing that I try to stress is that you've got to run your own race. You've got to train your own way. You've got to, this is fun. This isn't like, let's feel bad about ourselves kind of thing. This is a fun activity that we do to try to get healthy, to try to, live a long, healthy life. It's more of a lifestyle. And, I think that a lot of people just get caught up in that, so what I recommend is doing self-talk, or meditation or something that like just, what I say to myself, and every time I do this, like every time I'm out there, doing something and I start to feel like those little, things say, oh, you're not good enough. I think you're good enough. You're good. You've got this, and I kind of talk to myself about it. And you could do that too. That's something that we all should get in the habit of doing, just to feel better about ourselves. Again, this isn't an activity to feel bad about yourself because I was as you know from my last book, From Couch Potato to Endurance Athlete, I was never an athlete, right? So me starting at 48, running at 48 and then doing triathlons at 53, I'm never going to be as fast as some of these other people who have been running their entire lives. They'll always be a little faster than me, and that's okay. I'm good with that. And that's what you should tell yourself, you're good with it. And you know what? You're out there and you're doing this, and that's awesome, and just be proud of yourself for getting it done.
Yeah, because the overall percentage of people who can say they've completed any triathlons is really small.
Very
Not
small.
many people do this, and so you're already in rare air just going into the water the first time.
Absolutely.
So, Hilary, I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are 3 strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
I think the first one, and I do talk about it in the book, is nutrition, right? You want to eat They always say this, the rainbow, but it's true. You really want to eat the rainbow. You want to eat healthy. By eating healthy, it makes you feel better physically and mentally. The other thing is always stay hydrated. I think a lot of us, especially as we get older, we stop drinking as much for some reason. I'm not really thirsty. Yeah, you're thirsty. Drink. Keep drinking. And the hydration is super, super important. I find that when I do drink my, whatever, 60 ounces, or whatever I'm drinking a day, I feel much better. Yes, I'm going to the bathroom more, but I'm feeling better.
It's
My
training. It's
body,
all training.
it really, seriously. And then the third thing would be, just getting out there and doing something. No matter what it is, if you try a triathlon, great. It's so much fun. It's so different. It's such a challenge. But even if you walk or run, a couple of days a week, or, what I like to do is I like to do something at least up to like an hour or two every single day. I do take a rest day. Sleep is super important, really, really important. But I do try to take a rest day, although sometimes I just really don't feel like I need it. And I just keep going. I'll do a strength training. Again, strength training is super important, especially as we get older. We start losing muscle mass, and that's big. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, Hilary, if someone wanted to learn more about you, learn more about your book, Unlocking the Triathlon, where would you like for me to send them?
Sure, you could either buy it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or you could go to your local bookstore and ask for it. They all have access to ordering it, and the cover, I'm on the cover. I don't know if you saw that. That's me
Yeah.
at an event power race. And my original title for this book was Anyone Can Try, because it's true. Anybody could try. And so she actually added that to the bottom of the book. That's what my title was, but then I got kind of
Yeah,
nixed.
that'll happen with the publishers. They've got
It's okay.
people that tell them
Yeah,
how to sell books, and
exactly.
so
Exactly.
it's a great book. And if you're interested
Thank you.
in the triathlon, this is a great primer. There's training programs. She pretty much walks you soup to nuts to from the very beginning, getting your equipment sorted, getting there race day and being prepared versus not knowing what's going on, and then not getting disqualified because you took your helmet off too early. All those things are in there. So this is a really good book for anyone that's interested in learning how to do this and getting better, and also just the tools to get to a point where you can feel comfortable and confident that you can complete a triathlon. That's all in there. So it's a really good book for anyone interested in learning how to do the triathlon. So thank you, Hilary, for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Oh, I really appreciate you having me as a guest on your show. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's show, take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you would, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. It only takes a few minutes and it really does make a difference for the show. Thank you. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Corey Lefkowit and discuss her book, The Strong System. Transform your mindset and build your best body at any age. Until then, have a happy and healthy week.